This is the North Sea. It holds many mysteries within its often turbulent, violent water. Its sandy beaches, its wind-whipped sand dunes, deposited and left behind as its timeless waters gradually receded. And this is the once-thought wasted lynx land, with its nature-formed hillocks and knolls, rivulets and plateaus. The Lord created the sea, the land, the birds, the trees, and all things living. And lest one had been standing by the side of the Lord, we cannot be sure when he ordained that this piece of land be created. We can be sure it was for a purpose. Historians have found evidence dating back more than 700 years ago, before Columbus discovered America or Cook, Australia, that he gave us this land, almost the shape it is today, as a facility, and then willed to man the ability to invent a new game called golf, to be born and played on this sacred, hallowed lynx land, now more reverently known as the old course at St. Andrews, Scotland. It is man's closest link with the way the game was played centuries ago. It's truly amazing that to this day the architectural pattern nature provided has changed ever so slightly. Sheep were the original lawnmowers and grass cutters for fairways and greens. For where they ate the most became the putting surfaces that dictated by design where the fairways and tees were to go. But like anything man participates in, it will have its changes evident in time. Yet these are ever so slight, considering the natural original design. Photography had yet to be invented in the beginning at the recognized birthplace of golf. Fortunately, we can revert to excellent master-crafted oils and engravings to document where and approximately when it all began. Originally, there were 22 holes, 11 going out, 11 coming in along the same intended course. In 1764, the members of the Society of St. Andrews Golfers, feeling 2 of the holes to be too short and insufficient for the testing of their ability, decided to alter the course by merely filling in 2 cups and avoiding 2 teeing areas. Thus, the tradition of 18-hole golf courses was born and etched into the architecture of the game of golf forevermore. The custom is to play 7 holes out to the north, make the legendary loop of 4 holes, and return south for the remaining 7 holes. That is, with the exception of the Sabbath, for it truly can be said of the old course at St. Andrews, never on Sunday. As you play your round, one has to think well to stay out of the hazards, the multitude of hidden fairway bunkers with the heavy winds, gorse and heather, the slopes and hills. The holes played differently every day, subjected to all variations of weather, wind and rain, snow and cold. 'Tis truly a course for all seasons. The coastline of St. Andrews. This lovely ghost-like ancient city with all its seductive charm. The bandstand and adjacent bow butts, the grounds of which serve for ancient archery practice in defense of one's own property. And the township itself, the public bath or step-rock bathing pool, no longer maintained for the expense involved. The Victorian and Edwardian era influences on the structural architecture along the scores, an era of splendor and magnificence. St. Andrews Castle, built in the year 1200 with its exposed fortification ruins, served as a prison and a fortress guarded by sheer cliffs and the sea. It survived many besiegements and fierce battles between the Scots and the English. St. Rule's Tower for almost 800 years has served as a landmark for seamen as well as country travellers. The cathedral ruins, sacked in 1559 during the Reformation period by the Christian reformers, was founded in the year 1160 and consecrated in 1318, taking 3 generations of families to construct this awesome medieval structure. From the western hillsides looking east to the grange and the farmers' cottages is an awe-inspiring sight. The tower of St. Salvator's College adjoins the St. Andrews University campus. This world-renowned academic institution was founded about the year 1410 and has such noble alumni as Benjamin Franklin. St. Andrews is truly a creation of the Lord, a town which is dearly loved by its generations of people. It will resist change, but change it will to a degree. No matter, for it cannot desist, because the people love, and to love is to care. It is a place where time tends to stand still, in a world that frequently hurries by too fast. Then God created something else about 656 years later, a connection, in the shape of a little brown-skinned baby boy. He is to be raised in the Mexican barrio, in a mud-mortared, clapboard, windowless shack of West Texas. He will pick cotton and onions and know extreme poverty and hunger, not know who his father is, be truant from school to help support his mother and sisters, have to learn survival of the fittest in the black caddy yards of the Dallas Athletic Club golf course, ethnic persecution. Yes, he's had his share. His only credential was himself. 4 years in the United States Marine Corps became his sanctuary and first attempt at personal identification. From there, the rest is in the pages of history.
Did you ever arrive at a place you've always wanted to go to? Arrive with great expectation, and then after looking around, get a feeling of anxiety, of uncertainty. Almost a feeling that you're trespassing on sacred hallowed ground? I'm sure you have. Well, that's how I really feel right now. I get goosebumps all over just thinking about it. So now you know how I feel walking over these sand dunes. To get to these golf links, it's the very taproot of all golf. It's the old course here in St. Andrews, Scotland. I know you're probably saying to yourself, what in the world is Lee talking about? He's played 3 British Open championships there. Well, that's true, but I find playing a major championship takes a lot out of me, mentally and physically. I need time to collect myself through every round. I feel like I can't risk outside diversions or pleasure tours. Well, there's no major championship today. There's only me and my curiosity. I wanted to come and see and experience the way it may have been. See golf history for myself, not only hear about it. Maybe you'd like to pull up a chair and join me. We'll go through it together. You've seen the North Sea, and that's the Eden River. As good a story as I've heard of how golf began was that during the 12th century, the Dutch sailors used to anchor out there in loading and unloading their goods, trading with the city of St. Andrews. It was about 1.25 miles from here over these dunes, which had far more gorse and winds on them then. And it was during that time that these sailors used to go into town and paths were worn. They started a game. They had sticks, wooden-made balls, and sometimes even pebbles, beating it all the way to the town through this gorse and winds and these sand dunes, counting as they went along to see who was going to buy the drinks. Well, you can imagine the counting got awfully high and hard to remember over this terrain. So they picked out some flatter areas, 7 to be exact, and they put holes in them, holing out, making it shorter distance, ending at the town square. The townspeople picked up the sport from there, and it became the craze of the day. So much that to speed up play and avoid traffic jams, another hole was cut into the plateau surfaces, spaced apart so players could hole out playing to the north and returning to the south from adjacent fairways without delay. And that's how I believe that the only golf course in the world came to have 7 double greens. I've always felt like a sailor playing here anyway. I have to tack my way around to score well. I'm not Ripley, but I kind of believe the story. If you could put a roof over this lovely city of St. Andrews and the old course here, it'd be like a huge temple where over the years millions of golfers have come to see and worship and play this great game of golf. I guess it's like what Paris is to lovers, or a plate of refried beans to a guy like me. This is the first green here on the old course, and that little baby right over there is what the Scots call Swilcombe Burn. To us it only means a small creek or a stream, and it's the only water hazard here on the old course. It guards the front of this huge green, and when the pin is cut close to the burn, it becomes a very difficult hole. Weather predicts everything here. It can be blowing a gale in one moment, it can be raining the next, and then the sun can be out an hour later. But that's what makes Scotland so beautiful. Kind of reminds me of a story. 1970, during the Open here, Tom Shaw was playing just in front of me. The wind was blowing very hard against you on this hole. Tom Shaw hit a driver and a 3-wood and put it just 20 feet right behind this hole. He putted it and the wind swept it right into the burn. He dropped the ball on the other side, chipped it in for a bogey 5. What a 5 he made. I was standing out there shaking like a leaf, hit 3-iron to this green, hit it in 2, 2-putted, made par 4, and I thought I'd robbed the cookie jar. The burn crosses the 1st and the 18th fairway. It looks innocent enough, but I've often wondered, how many balls have they hit in this burn over the hundreds of years that they've played here? And how about this ancient old sandstone bridge? They tell me that it was built during the Third Crusade, more than 800 years ago. 800 years ago? That's before the match was invented, wasn't it? You know, all the greats of this game have at one time echoed their spikes off this bridge. Old Tom Morris, James Braid, Harry Vorden, the great Bobby Jones, Walter Hagen, Gene Sarazen, Sam Snead, Ben Hogan, Peter Thompson, Gary Player, the great Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, and Tom Watson. This is the 18th fairway. And how about those ghost-like buildings? No other place in the world like it. Seems like Dracula and Frankenstein are hiding in there someplace. Ah, yes. This fairway can also be known as the Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Brings back some memories, I'll tell you. You see that little beauty right over there? That's the Valley of Sin. As a matter of fact, I was paired with Doug Sanders the last round of the 1970 Open. I'd 3-putted myself out of it by the time I got here. His drive was so perfect, right there, needing a 4 on this final hole to beat Jack Nicklaus for the championship. He was about 80 yards to that green. The wind was behind him. The green was like glass, and facing him was that Valley of Sin. It was tragic what happened. But it's like I said, this is the Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Doug and I got to reminiscing about it and the old course here not too long ago. It has been said that every putt and every shot pleases somebody. And I'm really pleased to be sitting here to my good old buddy Doug Sanders, which I think is the best player that's ever played the game that never had the pleasure of winning a major championship. Doug, sitting here at St. Andrews, and do you think back about what happened in 1970 on this green?
Maybe not often. Sometimes I maybe go as high as 5 minutes before it ever crosses my mind. But it really has. It's yeah, I do think about it. I often wonder, you know, where did I make the mistake? Why did I not win the championship? And sometimes you often think it's not always won or lost on the last hole.
The shot, Doug, was not that easy. I remember I was playing with you, and you had it look like about an 80-yard shot, and you had to go through the Valley of Sin. The flag was just over the Valley of Sin. And you had a very strong wind behind you, and I always wondered why you chose to go in the air instead of a bump and run.
If I had left the ball, one thing I did not want to do is to leave it into the Valley of Sin, because I think that would have been almost as bad as knocking the ball out of bounds either on the first hole or the 18th hole, because going up, putting the ball up the hill would have been hard to judge, especially going downwind.
Doug Saunders has only a 4 here. This is his drive. To win. The strain must be terrible. Devil's up there. Well, it's a long way past. We haven't finished yet. He's got a judge when he looks absolutely exhausted.
Then after having hit the shot, which I thought was just a perfect shot in the air, and it was very difficult to stop, especially with a small ball, as you well know. And then putting back against the wind, I never really thought about the wind so much. You have a lot of things going through your mind.
Yeah. But now we haven't finished yet. Of all the greens that I wouldn't want, a long downhill one from the back off.
I'm thinking to myself, I really have made the putt as soon as I hit it, and I've been the only person to break par the 4 consecutive days. And then, needless to say, I left it about 3 feet short.
Oh, Lord. Well, that's not one that I would like to have.
Of course, you never want to 3-putt the last hole, you know, in front of all the gallery. And
Missed it. Yeah, certainly. Yes, that's the side you're bound to miss it. And there it is. And there, but for the grace of God.
I really wanted to win the championship. To win it at St. Andrews would have been the greatest feather, I think, of anyone that could accomplish, especially at that old golf course of where we are sitting here today. Man, what a thrill it would have been.
You know, it's a funny thing how people always talk about this old golf course, and when you stand here and you look out at all these old buildings and you look at the old clubhouse that the RNA has here.
You played all over the world. What do you think about St. Andrews? Isn't it a little different than we've ever had anything else?
Well, when I first saw the golf course, to be truthful with you, I really didn't think that much of it. I looked at it and I saw all those rolling hills, and the most difficult thing in the world for me to play St. Andrews was bunkers. I couldn't see them off the fairway. Now, I'm a pretty straight driver, but as I've gone back over the years, and you stand on that 18th tee, and you look at these buildings and that old clubhouse sitting there, and look, I get chill bumps. Look at this. I get chill bumps
Just thinking about it, yeah.
Just thinking about it. You know, it's very difficult for people to understand that. You know, there's people that play golf, and have played golf all their lives, and they've saved all their savings, and they just to go there and to see it. I really think the place is haunted. The ghosts are very friendly, but I really think it's haunted. And I tried to explain that to a friend of mine of what the feeling is coming up that 18th fairway. Whether you're winning or losing,
That's right.
It doesn't make any difference. And the only way that I could evaluate it was I'm Catholic, and I've gone to Rome, and I've gone to the Vatican, but I've not gone inside. But it's the same thing. It is going to the Vatican and looking at it and saying, hey, it's something that you have to see, is you have to come here, and you have to see what this golf course looks like. A lot of these holes have 2 flags, and they're huge greens. Did you really, truthfully, did you ever shoot at a wrong flag?
Well, a couple of practice rounds, you know, after the night before, you could subject to shoot at anything. With that mist coming down, it was pretty hard to see in the direction. But what do they have? They have, what, 10, 11 greens, I think. Is that about all they have at St. Andrews?
I think they have 7 greens that have, 7 greens that are double greens, yeah. And the funny thing about it is, every one total to 18. Every green that has 2 flags on it, total to 18.
You get to meet a lot of different people. You say, holding the pin over here, says, hi, Charlie, Frank. So that's my ball. You got to play over here. But again, I think that's what makes St. Andrews. Everything about it is different, and it has so much charm about it.
Doug, if you would have won this tournament, if you would have 2-putted, maybe even birdied this hole, and didn't have to go into the playoff, how would that have changed
Well, one thing it would have changed my bank account a great deal. It was a pretty expensive putt. They go back and say, no, how many millions it would have made. But I don't think, Lee, that my lifestyle would have changed any. I'm a very fortunate individual that I enjoy people. And that's one of the great things, you know, that I have. And I play golf where I can be able to visit with a lot of my friends. And it's fortunate it's been able to give me a lot of good income, travel around the world, and to have won. They say winning isn't everything, but it beats anything that comes in second. And I really feel like, you know, that I'm a winner. And just to have had the opportunity of playing with a lot of great friends, that I truly feel like that I'm one of the great winners of all times. And I've often thought of myself being a little bit like Hagen. You know, you always need to stop along the way and smell the flowers. And boy, I tell you one thing, I have smelled me a lot of flowers in my lifetime, and a few more I hope to along the way. So.
Well, I tell you, I know you're on your way to play golf, and it was great visiting with you, and thank you for these precious minutes that you gave me here, because it's really great.
I want to get about 100 balls. I'm going to stick down here. I'm going to play this 18th hole until I either make a 4 or a 3.
Have you ever seen anything as majestic as this old sandstone building? Well, not unless you've seen it before. It's the clubhouse here at the Royal and Ancient Golf Club at St. Andrews, the most famous in the world. Bobby, you're the official historian for the Royal and Ancient Golf Club, and there's a question I've always wanted to ask you.
Where did golf start? Did it start here in Scotland or in Holland?
Well, I reckon it started in Scotland and not in Holland. It's easier to say where than when, because, in fact, when would be 1450. There was a statute telling people they weren't allowed to play golf, they must practice their archery, because the kings at that time were keen in fighting battles against the English, and they didn't wish people practicing golf at all. But it goes back far, far before that. Could be 2 or 3 centuries before that there was golf being played. It's much easier to say where than when, because where is here on the links at the seaside, with the marvelous turf and the undulations and the changing winds, so that you never play the same course 2 days running.
Would today's golfer recognize this old course in St. Andrews, say back in 1840?
Yes, well, I think he would, although there were masses more winds than gorse at that time.
Well, let me interrupt you for a minute because of our home viewers. We want to talk about the gorse and the winds, and that would be like playing in your backyard in between the hedges. So that's what the winds is all about, isn't it?
Yes, that's right, yes. The wind's very, very tight-knit, nasty stuff. You couldn't play out of them. You'd be kind of pinpricked to death going in. And really, really nasty stuff. And it came very, very up near the fairways. The big difference that the modern golfer wouldn't see from 1840 is that they played the course the other way around. They played to the 17th green first of all, with the road bunker coming in a totally different way, and the road tight up behind, and then back to the 16th green and so on. And in those days, the 2 really tough holes were the 6th and the 13th.
Yeah, when you start talking about greens, Robbie, why are the greens so big here?
Well, they were always like that because the place has just been as nature intended. There were 7 large flat areas which, apart from first green, 18th, 9th and 17th, the rest of the 18-hole course was taken up with 7 double greens, and originally there was just one hole on each green, so you queued up from either side if you were coming home. I suppose you had the right of way, but you queued up to get round the golf course. And then in 1832, instead of having just one little pin about a foot long with a red rag on the end, they put 2 holes on the green, and of course play speeded up enormously after that.
Have the rules changed much over the years?
Well, funnily enough, not a great deal. From 1842, the first kind of actual rule book we have, to 1899, the experts have studied these and decided that there are not all that much difference. There's one particularly fine little rule book from 1891, and that includes, there it is, the 1891 rules, but it has a beautiful little map of the course further on, which pulls out, and there you... 1851 rules, I can hardly believe it myself, but on a medal day, if you went out, then you were given 5 minutes to search for a lost ball, and then it was 3 strokes and the distance.
Oh, it was 3 strokes.
3 strokes and distance if you lost your ball. So you had to be particularly careful with all that wind about. That was the other thing.
The evolution of the golf ball.
Well, the interesting thing is that just in one hand it's possible to hold golf balls covering from the very beginning up until about 1900. First of all, there's the feather golf ball. This one was made by Tom Morris, and it's in its leather case, and you took a hat full of feathers, a top hat full of feathers, and you stuffed it into that case and sewed it up.
It's hard, that one.
Yes, yes.
What about this one?
Well, now that is the gutter ball, which came in 1848 in place of the feathery. This one was made by Alan Robertson, and the original ones were smooth, and they ducked and swung and went all over the place, made out of gutter perca. And now you see the markings on this one. They found by trial and error that in fact, once they had hacked the golf ball about a bit, it made it fly straighter.
And that one?
And that one is an American product. This is the Haskell, made by American, the first core-wound ball. There was one really amazing ball called the pneumatic. That one they injected air into, and well, according to Francis Wemyss, who was the first American captain here in 1951, he said it either exploded in your golf bag or in your pocket. And, if it failed to do that, then it might get onto the green and run out of gas. Then when you tried to putt it, it wouldn't move.
What was the British Open like in the early days?
Well, the big difference was that it was played so late in the year, in the autumn, probably in October, and that made quite a difference. We have an old 1891 draw sheet, and with just 4 lines of instructions on the foot, and it says on that, the first round will start at 9 a.m., the second round at 12:15, 3¼ hours to have your round of golf and your lunch. Anyone who arrives late goes to the end of the draw, and the last little bit was, as the days are short, competitors are asked not to waste time.
You know, I've put a lot of miles on my golf game playing all over the world for some 17 years, and I've heard so often that golf may have begun in Holland and on ice yet. Well, since we're this close, and I'm so curious, should we give it a go? On my visit to Holland, I found out that words such as putt, spelled P-U-J-E in Dutch, and tee, spelled T-U-I-T-Y-E, are derived only from the Dutch language and cannot be found in the English language archives or anywhere else. This justifies some credence to Holland for originating the game of golf long before the Scots. Stephen Van Hinkel, the noted golf historian of the Netherlands, and I talked about the history of the game.
Where and when did it begin, golf, in this country of Holland?
Well, you never quite know when and where, but you can only sort of try to find what the earliest beginnings were. They may not have been the very earliest, but at least that you can find. Now, the first game that you can trace was played around the village. There's a historical association to it, and that village is still there. As a matter of fact, you passed it when you came here from the airport. Loenen aan de Vecht, and this church is still right there where it stood. And there were 2 castles involved, one here, one there, and a windmill. Every year, since 1297, a game was played in commemoration of an historic event. It started right here. This was the courthouse of that village. And they played along these fields to that castle and to the door of that castle. And then the next hole was from that castle along the river here to that mill, and again to the door. Then they went from the mill, 3rd hole, to that castle, again to the door, and the final hole was right down back to the courthouse and to the door of the courthouse.
So they only had 4 holes?
4 holes. But there were a lot of holes than now, because the whole end of it is about 4,500 yards.
Now, Scotland says that the game of golf started there, and now that I've come here, the people here think that it started in Holland. Is there...
You actually haven't heard me say that.
No, I didn't.
It's a very delicate issue. Fact of the matter is that such evidence as you can find here goes back about 200 years further than what you can find in Scotland. Now, that doesn't prove anything either way, because the fact that you can't trace it doesn't really mean it wasn't there. Now, mind you, this is a bit of guesswork, but here is what I take. That was the first equipment ever used. And strangely, it's still used today, once a year. And this was the club, and that was the ball that went with it. And you may wonder why it's egg-shaped, but if you play your game on unmown fields, a ball that runs along like that is not likely to sink in as much as if it were round. Huh?
I see. Yeah.
Even the club is a little bit more clever than you are inclined to think, because you could use it this way, or conversely, if you were left-handed that way.
Yeah.
But if a ball got stuck in a hole or some way, you could turn it 90 degrees line around and pick the ball out of the hole with it. And that didn't shoot that game very well, so they started developing other materials. And this is the ball that is still used on the few golf courses that are left today. And this is the implement you play it with.
I was admiring this, and I've seen some pictures with this particular club in it. Now, can you imagine playing with this and looking at your opponent, and your opponent says, I made 5, and he says, no, I made 6, and then they go at each other with this?
I would rather not be your opponent in that case.
I gave a little clinic, and you can see by the turnout of Dutch people, they enjoyed listening and seeing what tips they could pick up. His Royal Highness Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands was seated front and center. He's a pretty darn good player, too. We got to talking about the game.
Your Royal Highness, it really gives me a great pleasure, just not only sitting here with you, but to talk about my favorite subject, which is the game of golf. You've been a keen golfer for many, many years, and what's the game of golf meant to you?
There's no question that it's the game that I like best and which frustrates me most.
What was the lowest handicap that you had?
12.
12 was the...
12, and now I'm 24, alas.
Now you're 24.
Yeah.
You know, when we build golf courses in America, we just go out and get a piece of property and we build the golf course.
Yeah.
In Japan, for instance, it's a very small country. Only 15% of the land is livable, and you almost have to go through an act of Congress to build a golf course. I was wondering here about the Netherlands simply because you have reclaimed a lot of the land from the sea, and the procedures of building golf courses here. Is it easy?
No, it's definitely not easy, but we have, I think, 30 golf courses now and about 5 under construction, and I do hope that we'll get a lot more public courses where people don't have to become members of the club, and so we can discover more natural talents.
How has the ecology and nature changed it in building golf courses here?
Well, I'll tell you, almost 25 years ago, I started a movement called Save the World Wildlife, and that means nature, first of all. And as somebody who's worked for that and is still working hard on it, I must say that golf, first of all, teaches people to appreciate nature, and that I don't know of any golf course where they have destroyed the ecology. On the contrary, I think it brings it nearer to the people, and therefore I'm all for it.
You've played for many, many years, and I know you've enjoyed this game as much as I do. When I go to bed at night, I have a difficult time going to sleep because I can't wait for daylight, because I know I can go back out on the golf course. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't feel so good in the morning, but in the last week, with my son-in-law and his son, grandson, we usually left the house at 6:30 to go to the nearest golf club, which takes about an hour, and to play early. and then I'm in the habit of not talking before 9 o'clock. That makes it easy for everybody.
The Prince. He sure is one, isn't he? A very nice gentleman. We're on our way back to Scotland, so stay with me. These church ruins in Gillane, Scotland date back to about 927 A.D. and adjoin the legendary old Gillane Golf Course and Archie Baird's Golf Museum. Archie's an esteemed member of the world's famed Golf Collector Society and a very interesting person.
Well, golf started in Holland because we know of documentary evidence back to 1300, and also these very interesting pictures. These pictures show golfers in the early 16th century. They show the balls that they played with, the clubs, and the dress that they wore. Now, the surprising thing is that these are all boys. And the other interesting thing is the clubs that they played with. The shafts were made of hazel, and the head was made of lead. And therefore, they didn't hit the ball very far. But they did teach us how to make the ball, and this was a great industry in Holland. They also, the game began to die out by 1700, and they began to play it with a soft ball and played the game indoors. They then played the game on ice in the outdoors, and the Scots wool merchants took it up. And this picture is 1668 and shows golfers on the ice. That's Haarlem Cathedral. That windmill is still standing, so we know exactly where they're playing. And this fellow and this fellow here are both wearing kilts, and the Dutch never wore kilts.
Arch, tell me about the feather ball. How was it made and how long did it take to make one?
Well, the feather ball was made by stuffing a top hat full of feathers into a leather case of that size. And it took a man all day to make 2 golf balls.
How much did they weigh?
Well, they weighed really very much the same as a modern golf ball.
How far could you hit one?
They could be hit 200 yards.
With the wind or against it?
Well, you'd need a bit of wind to make 200 yards, certainly.
What about the cost of them?
Well, they were expensive. They cost as much as a club.
Well, Archie, it was really kind of a rich man's game, wasn't it?
It was a rich man's game, and it certainly hindered the development of the game because the feather ball was so expensive.
Well, would you say that the gutter ball that came along was a benefit to the average golfer? The economics of it?
The gutter ball saved the game of golf because it was cheap. A man could make 100 in a day, and therefore everybody could play.
And here we are, back to the Royal and Ancient Clubhouse. What we're seeing now is one of the last strongholds of men's golf. The men's club room, known as the Big Room, inside the Royal and Ancient Clubhouse. The ceilings look like Wedgwood china, and it's the Holy of Holies where for over 130 years members have been meeting after their game. It feels like a magic carpet back in time, doesn't it? Biggest club room I've ever seen. Those are the original Canadian yellow pine wood lockers you see along the walls. They're more than 100 years old. And are you ready for this? To raid one of them, you have to be a member for some 35 to 40 years or longer. Even though Mary Queen of Scots played here at St. Andrews in 1565, it wasn't until 1955 that the first ladies were permitted inside the clubhouse. Now it's twice a year. A former captain of the Royal and Ancient, John Salveson, treated me to some very interesting information. Look at these life-size oil paintings. They're awesome, so real. John White Melville, former captain and patron of the township. The Prince of Wales became captain of the club in 1922, king in 1936. This is Balfour, later prime minister, during his driving-in ceremony as captain, like our club president. The Queen actually came here in 1982 to see her portrait.
John, when you talk about views, you can't beat this one, can you?
Well, there's only one of those.
It's beautiful, and looking down at that fairway with no bunkers.
How about this oil original of Willie Park, the first British Open champion, 1860 at Prestwick, Scotland. Borden, Braid, and Taylor, the greats of British golf.
Now, Lee, here we are in the South Room, which is our museum. A lot of old clubs and memorabilia there, some of them 200 years old or thereby.
I love this.
these early wood clubs here, and look at this. This is the design changes, 1895, 1902.
Well, that's quite modern, really.
Yeah, breathtaking.
Tremendous. Let's have a look in the away for a
I'd
start.
love to, yeah. I was looking at this one, John. It said the Union Parlor. Is this the old clubhouse?
Well, the members shared the Union Parlour with the members of the Union Club until about 1848 or thereabouts. And then in 1852 they decided they needed their own clubhouse. So they started to build one, and it was finished in 1854.
And then this is the finished product, 130 years old.
130 years later. But basically the same as you see it there.
How many members do you have here, John?
1,800 members. 1,050 are, shall we say, home members, and 750 overseas members.
This is artist Charles Lee's famous 1850 painting of St. Andrew's golfers and the more important members of the Royal and Ancient Golf Club. I wonder if they were all club champions. And how about this stovepipe hat? Couldn't be upright back in those days. You had to be very flat on your backswing. Maybe that's where I learned how to play.
Look at all these super old clubs here, Lee.
Oh, those are
Some
beautiful.
beauties. How about that up in the corner there? You like
That's
that?
the one you were telling me about. You know, I kept admiring that thing, and it's so short. The blade, it's not very long, is it?
Inch and 3/4.
What was it for? It was made for?
In 1851, if you got into tree roots and you thought your ball was unplayable, the rule was that you could pick and drop for a penalty of 1 shot. But if your opponent said, "Ha, I think you're just, looking for the easy way out," he was allowed 2 shots at it. If you could get it out in 2 shots, these 2 shots went on your score.
Oh, no. I think I would have tried my own shot.
Yeah.
This club on the end, I was admiring that
That's
one.
another great club, and here's one very similar.
I was
Tremendous weight.
I was looking at this club, the big, thick wooden shafted, but how small this head is, a little concaved,
right.
no grooves. Could you put spin on this as much today?
Not maybe as much as today, but I'm sure you could put spin on it. Well, you could.
And how about this driver from Freddie McLeod? And this brassy here from J.H. Taylor. And this 5-iron from Gene Saracen. You remember that 5-iron. That's the one he used to make that hole-in-one on the 8th hole at Troon in 1973. But look at this, a putter from Bob Charles. But it's not there, John.
Well, after he won the Open in 1963, he presented it to the club, but he's never been able to putt quite the same since.
Is he going to bring it back?
Well, I hope so.
I hope he does too. I love this one. Look at this one. A Massey Niblick from Ted Wright. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful collection.
What about the trophies and
Oh, I'd love to see
like to see that.
Yes, I would.
How about that now?
Now, that is absolutely beautiful. Look at that. That would make Fort Knox jealous right there. Let me ask you, what the silver balls, gold balls, and a beautiful putter in the middle, what does it mean, John?
Well, the silver putter was first played for in 1754. Each captain, as he drives in, a replica of his ball is attached to these clubs, and that's what these silver balls are. And the gold balls are royal captains that were there.
This belt fascinates me. It looks like it belonged to a fighter. Who did that belong to?
Well, that's the famous Open Championship belt, first played for at Prestwick in 1860, and won outright because he won it 3 years in a row by Tom Morris Jr.
There was no trophy in 71.
But he won its successor, the Open Championship Cup, which
Oh, that's
we're
absolutely
all
gorgeous.
recognized now.
That's what they've been playing for since 1872.
That's right.
Who's won it the most times?
Harry Barden, 6 times.
6 times, huh?
You won it twice.
Yeah, but I was very lucky to win this. That's what the battle's all about, John.
That's it.
Yes, it is.
It'll mean that Trevino has got to hold his to win.
That's a moment in my life I'll never forget. Winning the British Open in 1971 at Birkdale. But how good can a player feel that's won this great British Championship 5 times and probably will again? That's what Tom Watson's done.
you have the force and the power to win any tournament that you want to. But to win this great British Open Championship 5 times in the last 10 years is just uncanny. Now, which was your favorite?
77. 77 and Turnberry was my favorite. That was the year that Nicklaus and I went head-to-head in the last, especially the last 18 holes, and came right down to the last hole where Nicklaus made that 40-footer after hitting it off in the right gorse, almost in the gorse unplayable, and hit a great shot from there just to put it near the green. Then he made a 40-footer, and I had to gag one in from about 2.5 feet after hitting a great second shot myself.
Well now, Jack has himself in a really testy situation here. Watson's second shot first. There's a really solid swing. What a spectacular shot. That says it all. Jack's nicely on the right side of the putting surface. Jack's there on the green, but look where Watson's ball is. The sheer drop. This for the championship. Well done, well done.
I remember that because it was the only tournament that I can ever remember that I came out of the clubhouse to see this, because we were going absolutely crazy in there. What kind of a thrill was that, to do that? Because, we've all been in the heat of battle. And I remember a long putt that you made on a par 3 coming down a hill.
15, yeah.
Which hole was that?
That was 15. I hit a 4-iron to the left of the green, and it hung up on top of the hill. And that, of course, that year there was no rough, very, very little rough, and I chose to putt it. I was a good 10 or 12 feet off the green, and a hard downslope like that, and then a left or right breaking putt. And Nicklaus put it on the right front of the green, and I putted first and knocked it right in the heart. It would probably have gone about 5 or 6 feet by, but I'm usually not very short. And Nicklaus knocked it up in. I made a 3 or 4 foot putt for the tournament. 14T, I'll never forget it. We're looking right in the sun, just straight away right in the sun, and we're waiting for the gallery to clear, and it's dusty, and there are just hordes of people. And I'm just waiting there. We're not saying anything to each other, so I just look over at Jack, and I said to him, this is what it's all about. And he looked at me and he said, "You bet it is." And
a lot of people really don't know what a links course is all about. Link courses they're on the ocean, aren't they?
Well, the links, from what I understand, the definition of a links course is it's a golf course built on the links land, and the links land is the non-arable land that the farmers couldn't use for growing anything, and that was basically just a wasteland. And I remember going over my first year, and I didn't like the links courses. It took me until 79, 4 years later at Royal Lytham St. Anne's. I didn't play well at the tournament, but I finally understood what the game was all about over there, and I began to fall in love, and fall in love with that type of golf. And
you talk about the old course, the granddaddy of them all, which is one of my favorites. I learned to love it. I didn't love it at first.
It's the home of golf. Everybody knows the name St. Andrews. It's like Augusta National or Pebble Beach in the United States. It's the top named golf course.
When you start talking about bunkers, and you start talking about each and every one of those bunkers having to have a name. Hell's Bunker.
Somebody's buried in one of them.
Is that what it is?
Every one of them.
Principal's Nose. I have no idea where that one's at.
The Strath Bunker.
The Strath Bunker. Now, why do you think they have those names?
Why do they have those names? Somebody probably had it. He probably took 10 or 12 shots to get out of them, and then he picked it up and threw it out and walked in. And that person was named after that bunker. I really don't know, but that's...
Can you remember any shots that really made a turning point? Great shots, any one particular?
Well, the 2-iron shot at Royal Birkdale, the last, on the 18th hole, the 72nd hole, where I had 213 to the hole, into the wind, a little bit left to right, and I just flushed it right at the hole, about 15 feet short of the hole. It gave me an easy 2-putt to win. I think that's one great shot that I'll never forget.
Tom, now you've gone to the well and you found it empty at times. And there is something that separates a winner and a loser. What is that?
Heart. Just a story comes back, listening to Sam Snead. He was just talking off the cuff one night to another fellow, and I overheard him, and he said, "Give me a guy who has 50% talent, 100% heart, and I'll take him every time over a guy who has all the talent and about 50% heart. Every time," he said.
I think it's a combination
You
of...
know why? Because when you're on the golf course, you're not going to hit every shot well. You're going to hit a lot of shots badly. And you're going to hit some shots that, your mother can hit better than you. You're going to miss some short putts. You're going to hit... you're going to pick the wrong club. And the guys who have heart, they're going to just... What you really have to realize in this game is that this game is not won on perfect shots. It's won on missed shots, and you just can't hit every shot right on the button.
What's this great game meant to Tom Watson?
When I look back at it, the only thing I've ever wanted out of this game is to be recognized by my peers as a great golfer. The fans are actually second, but the people who know, the guys who play out here, the men who play out here, I want their respect. I want to hear from them that, yeah, you're a great player.
Technically speaking, do you think that you find the better player in match play or medal play?
Well, I think you find more excitement in match play. I think in medal play, I think medal play determines the better player because you can't afford to waste a shot. But match play is more exciting because you can't afford to take that risky shot that you wouldn't take in medal play or in stroke play. It has a lot of both of them have a lot of merit. I certainly would like to see us play professionally more match play. I think it's a lot more fun. Hey, you'd be king at that. You'd be like the old Walter Hagen.
I really don't care as long as we get a chance to play this great game.
Yeah.
The headstone for young Tom Marsh is carved into the south wall of the cathedral grounds. He had won the British Open Championship 4 times before his early death at age 24. History has it that the first great pro golfer, Allen Robertson, is also buried here. You have to take the time to explore this lovely ancient historic city of St. Andrews with all its heritage and tradition. There's so much more than just golf. In these cathedral ruins, some of the headstones were so old I couldn't read them. But here's one, 1833. How gorgeous this is. It's really hard to describe. And look here. It makes me proud to even be able to see something like this. That's 1,100 years old. And it's all built with sandstone. It took 158 years to build this structure. Absolutely amazing.
St. Andrews by the northern sea, a haunted town it is to me. A little city worn and grey, the grey North Ocean girds it round, and o'er the rocks and up the bay, the long sea rollers surge and sound. And still the thin and biting spray drives down the melancholy street, and still endure and still decay towers that the salt winds vainly beat. Ghost-like and shadowy they stand, dim mirrored in the wet sea sand. O broken minster looking forth beyond the bay above the town, O winter of the kindly north, O college of the scarlet gown, and shining sands beside the sea, once more I watch you, and to me it is as if I touched his hand. And therefore art thou yet more dear, O little city grey and sere, though shrunken from thine ancient pride, and lonely by the lonely sea, and these fair halls on Isis' side, where youth and hour came back to me. The drifting surf, the wintry year, the college of the scarlet gown, St. Andrews by the northern sea, that is a haunted town to me.
take a stroll down Pillmore Links Road for a visit to one of golf's legendary figures. Some kind of man, I'll tell you. He is unique to the world of golf in that his club-making skills, as well as his indisputable knowledge of the game, has him recognized as a legend in his own time. Laurie, 83, now is as chipper as ever as honorary professional at the Royal and Ancient Golf Club, as his father was before him.
Oh, Laurie, that wood still fascinates you, doesn't it?
Oh, it sure does. I could spend and do this all day. You never get tired working with hickory clubs because you're always making your clubs to a certain spring for an individual. And, you know, the scraping is part of it. It's the planing, the filing, the scraping, the papering. And it's so much of this and so much of that till you get it working as you want it. You can tell after each operation whether it's coming right or not, maybe take a little more off. But it's just something that, you know, time passes so quickly when you're working with hickory. But working with steel, it's a long day.
You know, one of the things that fascinated me by this is when you were doing this, I always thought you used glass to do this with.
No, it was only the amateurs that used the glass. No. Some old amateur that's trying to make a shaft a little whippier that you've heard about. There's no way. The scraper's been in vogue for years and years, same as a spoke shave and a plane and a file and a chisel. No, this has been there for years.
Let me ask you, how long would it take you to make a set of 9 irons wooden shafted?
We only made 8 irons. It was only 8 irons in a set. Well, that was just a nice day's work. If it was a special set of clubs, it'd take you just about an hour to make each shaft, and you had to match every shaft coming along.
I see.
You would plane them, file them, scrape them, and that's number 1. Then you pick up the next one, you do the same thing, and at the final stage you would have the whole 8 lying there ready to be papered, but you're still working on the spring of the shaft, the balance of it and everything else.
How long would it take you to make, a set of 3 woods?
No. That's a different thing. It'd take me about 3 days.
3 to 1
Because I get
club a
lots
day?
of them, yes.
1 club a day, or would you go making all 3?
Well, you make the 3 heads, you see. You would make the 3 heads and coming from the different stages. And then you put the shaft in, file off your socket, put on your grip, and then start to paper it.
The thing that I was noticing here is this ram's horn. Now, what do you do with this?
That's what we use the ram's horn, and it's been used for hundreds and hundreds of years. You'll never find a golf club without a ram's horn in it, no matter how old it is.
Mm-hmm.
This protects the edge from chipping. Ram's horn is just about the toughest thing you can get, Lee.
What are the most important changes that you've seen in golf to you?
No, definitely the introduction of the steel shaft. It took an awful lot of skill out of the game. You know, there was more skill with hickory than there was with steel. With hickory, your hands are very active, and you know, you had to have hands that were working and very exacting. Because if you whipped them in too quick, you whipped it over your shoulder, it was hooked, and if you left it open with a torque on the hickory, it's way out here. The ball of hickory, at least off steel, doesn't go so far off the line because there isn't the extra torque on it. But I mean, the games that come so popular, it would be a shame if we hadn't steel shafts.
Laurie, the gutta-percha ball, how long did it take to make one?
That's a little difficult, Lee, because I'll tell you why. You cut off your gutta-percha off the rods, you know, it was just in rods, and you cut it off and you threw it into a big pot. So you took a piece out and you put it in the mold, and you squeeze it up in a press, and leave it for maybe half an hour or an hour till it's set. Then you took it out, you cut off the fin, and you would leave it. People asking you questions.
Let me see that. Oh, yeah, now see, that's a good one. Let me ask you, compared to today's golf ball, the compression on this ball as far as feel and distance is concerned, how would you compare this ball with today's ball?
Oh, there's no comparison. No comparison at all. You see, if you had got a ball 200 yards, it was a mighty shot.
But with the coming of the gutter ball, it opened up the game to the working men, and they lasted much longer. And you could have them remolded. If they got too many hacks in them, you could put them in a mold and the hot water again, you see, and put them together and give it a coat of paint.
Laurie's workbench reminded me of my workbench, where everything seemed lost. But as soon as I needed to find something, I knew exactly where to go. He has the marvelous master's touch for the air-dried straight-grain hickory, the classic octoloni style in lines of the yellow-headed wooden clubs, drivers, brassies, spoons. A perfectionist matchup by Laurie that sadly will never be witnessed again.
Laurie, if you could change anything in your lifestyle, what would it be?
I don't think I would change it.
You loved it just like it was?
Just as it is and has been.
I have to be very careful with this because I knew someday I would try one. You know, about 75% of the townspeople play golf. Golf is far more than a sport to them. It is a deep-rooted religion. When you're invited into the main club room of the St. Andrews Golf Club, it's an experience, let me tell you.
Sir John, how are you? Nice to see you. I have wondered this for many, many years because I've walked into all the clubs all over the world, and I've always seen the pictures all over the wall about these old-timers playing in something like this. Now, what I want to know is... Can I help you? All I want to know is how in the world... How do I look, all right?
Yeah.
Now,
Much better.
what I want to know is how did they ever go out there and play a beautiful links like here at St. Andrews in this?
Well, they had to make it a bit more difficult than it is for you boys, you know, and they must have done very well now if they had your equipment and attire.
When you start talking about this beautiful links here and the way that we play it, we only get to see this one golf course, but there's actually more to this than just one course.
Oh yes, the links of St. Andrews comprise 4 golf courses, 4 18-hole golf courses, and 1 9-hole golf. The 9-hole course is just for beginners, but the others are all full-fledged golf courses. The surprising thing, perhaps, to most people is that all these courses are managed by a links trust, an independent body, not by an individual club. And this arose mainly because as early as the 12th century, the residents of St. Andrews had established a patrimony over the courses.
Well, I can understand the money, but what's the pat all about? You're talking to a poor little Mexican kid here. Money, I do understand that. But what does it mean?
Well, I even checked this up from the dictionary, but it means a sort of heritage. They had used it so long that it became a right to preserve this patrimony of the residents. When changes of local government took place, they established this links trust to make sure that, you know, when the preservation had moved from the town council into a much bigger district council, that the rights of St. Andrews people would be preserved.
And I tell you what, I'm going to go out there right now and I'm going to try a quick 9 with this and see if I can break 75. Just
How about this for a clubhouse? It was built in the 1880s and belongs to the Ladies Putting Club of St. Andrews, the original and oldest ladies golf club in the world.
You know, Helen, that's the first greenskeeper I've ever seen that was a lady, and it's only appropriate simply because this is a ladies' club.
Absolutely, yes.
How long have you had this ladies' club, and when did it start?
In 1867.
1867.
1867, yes. The oldest ladies' golf club in the world. Started as the ladies' golf club.
And it just all started here. Why? Why did it start?
Mainly because I think the male members of the Royal and Ancient had daughters, and they were a little tired of archery and games like that, and haunted the area here, so they let them have a go at golf, as it was known then, which is putting as it's become now.
They wouldn't let them play on the golf course?
Oh, no, no, no. It would have been very difficult with ladies and crinolines, of course.
How many members did you start with?
We started with 200 ladies and 100 associate gentlemen.
Oh, you did let men in?
Associates, yes. No voting rights.
None?
No.
So it's run strictly by ladies?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
They call it the Himalayas.
That's right.
I can see why, with all the little hills that they have on it.
Yeah.
Now, how many lady members do you have?
We have 150 at the present time, and a waiting list of 2.5 years.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
How about the dress? I mean, when they first started, they were in the long dresses?
Oh, yes, and crinolines and bonnets. They had bonnets, and they used to tie a ribbon. If it was a windy day, which it usually is at St. Andrews, they would tie a ribbon around the bottom of their skirt to keep it from blowing.
One of the things that I remember is that ladies were not allowed to cross Slocum Burn. Why?
Well, probably because of the dress they wore in those days, which was called a crinoline dress. And it would have been very difficult to walk in the high grass that would be on the golf course as it was in those days.
Can you cross it now?
Yes, you can cross it now.
If you're playing?
If you're playing, yes. Yes.
Do you have any competitions here?
Oh, yes, we have many competitions. We play each Wednesday for 6 months of the year, which is our season. And we have a monthly medal, one Wednesday of the month, with some magnificent trophies and medals.
I'd love to see them.
Right. This is one of our oldest trophies.
Oh, this is beautiful. This goes all the way back to 1891, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is the Prince of Wales trophy.
Hmm?
And this is the Queen Victoria trophy. And this is our oldest medal. As you will see, the lady is wearing the crinoline, which is the dress that the lady started.
The first Ladies Golf Championship was played in 1893 in Scotland. What challenges the ladies must have faced in those early years trying to play their game. The costumes or wardrobes made you wonder how on earth a swing could be attempted. You can almost feel the corset binding, the restrictions of the bustle. And look at the hats that had to be worn just to be proper. Very difficult on a windy day.
That's rather good.
It's a wonder they could swing at all, but swing they did with very excellent results. Wardrobe changes presented the most visual evolution in ladies' golf. The motivation to play the game better than one's opponent. Forced changes in the swing, which in turn demanded a looser, freer, more flowing playing attack. It eliminated the forcing of flesh and bone to a cloth and wire straitjacket. Likewise, the swing developed into a smoother, more graceful body movement. This helped to develop more club head speed and more distance. Atta way to go, girls. There was a golf explosion in the feminine world in the 1880s. The introduction of the Ladies' Championship in 1893 changed the concept in men's minds of ladies' golf and their ability to play a full-length course. They can get the job done now, I'll tell you. Excellent play. Yes, sir. Let's hear it for the ladies. Take it from me, special treat is in store for any golfer when he comes to St. Andrews. You have to hire one of their very own vintage caddies. It's a fun experience, I'll tell you. Here's a classic example. Hi, Tip. Hi, Alfie.
See you, Pete. Nice to see you.
Alfie, I wanted to ask you a question. Where did the word caddy derive from?
Well, the word caddy derived from France. Mary, Queen of Scots, brought it over, and it was Lee Cadet. And he used to do odd jobs. A bag carrier, a carrier of clubs. And that is where the name caddy came.
That's where it came from, and it's stuck ever since.
That's right.
Tip, I wanted to ask you a question. We know that you caddy for Arnold Palmer.
I did meet Arnold in 1960 in the Centenary Open here, and well, I've been with him ever since.
Yeah. Alfie, now I know that you've been caddying a little bit longer than that, and you've had the pleasure of winning many British Open championships, 5 with Tom Watson. When you started, were they still playing with wooden shafts, or steel shafts came in?
They was playing with wooden shafts, sir, and there was no such thing as even T-pegs. We used to have a box full of sand, and of course I was a tender age of 8, and they used to put me out with the old gentlemen, the club members, and I used to have to make a pyramid of sand and tee the ball.
Put the ball up. Yardages. I've noticed the courses that I've played here for many, many years have no yardages. We're spoiled in America. We have a 100-yard marker, a 200-yard marker, 150-yard marker. Here, you tend to, you club the people that you...
Well, I do. I do with Arnold. Yes.
Yes. We was brought up on the eyeball game.
Arnold, he asked me nearly every time, you know, which I appreciate because I like to be involved in the game, you know.
Yeah.
And what helped me, I was a free handicap golfer myself, which wasn't too bad, you know, and that really did help me. And the very first time I met Arnold in 1960, I didn't know what I was going to do, you know. I just took a chance, and I noticed how strong he looked and whatever. So when I took a 3-iron, I gave him a 5-iron, and it worked out wonderfully well, you know. So that was it, you know. It was as simple as that.
You, Alfie, wages, when you started, how much did you make?
Well, in old money, sir, I made 1 shilling, of which is 5p in new currency today. And plus, I had to clean these hickory shaft golf clubs.
Excuse me, 5p. How much was that in dollars?
In dollars? It's
50
5
cents?
cents. 5 cents.
5 cents?
Yeah,
Yes.
5 cents.
That was it?
And then I used to come in, and I used to use the wet cloth or the emery paper,
But he's made up for the sense, though.
and shine the clubs and make them clean and give them back to the caddy master.
The old emery paper.
And he used to give me threepence for my tip, but he only gave me tuppence because he used to take a penny or a cent out of that threepence.
You mean Alfie? You mean if you cleaned the iron head, you got an extra tuppence or threepence?
I did.
That was with the emery paper.
That's right.
That's right. Before they became rushless. Yeah.
In the old days of Tip and I remember, you wasn't even allowed in a clubhouse. A professional golfer wasn't even allowed in a clubhouse. He used to have to change in the boot of his car.
Now you are going back a bit, but that's absolutely true.
I mean, that only came in Lee. That only came in the early 60s.
If he wanted a drink, he had to go to the back window and get a drink.
That's correct.
Out of the golf club.
Tip, your most memorable moment.
Well, Lee, of course, to caddy to the Open champion for the first time, which was in '61 at Rob Birkdale, it's with Arnold Palmer. That gave me a lot of joy. But if you're talking about one particular shot during that tournament, I think it had to be the 15th, which is now the 16th now, but it was the 15th in these days at the Royal Birkdale. And he hit his tee shot just a few yards to the right of the target, and it was in willows like this, you know, probably about 3 or 4 feet high. And we found the ball by the help of some outside agency, and we went out into the fairway, and it was so bad that we lost the ball again. You know, it was that bad, and and he says to me, Tip, he says, what should I do? I said, well, take the sand out and knock it short of the cross bunkers, you know, and the pitcher on the green might still make 4. He says, okay, I think that's right. And all of a sudden he took the 6-iron out. And a great golfer called Henry Cotton was our sort of marker or official at that particular time. 6 iron? I says, there's no way, sir. Anyway, he knocked it on the green, you know, and got the 4. And Henry Cotton says to the press, he says, you know, that's the greatest golf shot I've ever saw in my damn life, you know. And I'll tell you something, I thought we'd got to be there forever, you know, but he's so strong, and all you saw was you know, willows going up, you know, up in the sky type of thing.
What about yours?
Tip, they put a plaque to Arnie from that.
That's right.
Was a wonderful, great shot.
Alfie, when was your most memorable moment?
Well, I've had plenty of memorable moments, Lee, but I think the memorable one was the 2-iron that Tom Watson hit into the final hole at Royal Birkdale, the 18. And he just handed the club to me. He says, Alfie, you won me another British Open.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was good.
Very good.
How long are you guys going to be caddying?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Lee, until I'm unable to walk, you know, so it's going to be, I hope to be quite a few years yet.
How about you?
Well, my answer to that, Lee, is till he's got to me ashes on the 18th.
Oh, all right. I'll go along with that.
There is one more link missing. A link like a lion's roar in the jungle that unites all the brothers with total respect for the king. Some 25 years ago, this magnificent line forged the path between continents when all seemed lost. He made it an easy, worthwhile journey for those to follow. Who else challenges the elements of the world the way he does but Arnold Palmer? It is he who brought back all the dignity and honor that goes with a British Open Championship. Television did the rest.
There's not a man that's been admired more, and it's my good pal Arnold Palmer. And it's really nice for you to stop by and kind of chit-chat with me. Arnold, I wanted to ask you, when you come here to the old course and you look at it, and you look at the history, why do you think that it still has that reputation after 400 years?
Well, Lee, I think tradition is probably the biggest thing, and tradition starts when golf starts. And I think that the people that have come here over the years have spread that tradition throughout the world. I know when I was a youngster and thinking about playing golf and looking for places that I might want to play if I ever got to the point where I could do those things. And St. Andrews was one place I wanted to go, see, and play golf. It's got a mystique about it that until you get there and you see it in all the conditions with the winds and the rains and the rolling terrain and the ocean, it brings back and it makes you think of things that I suppose golf-wise you can't ever replace anywhere else in the world. The old clubhouse, it just stays the same. It's a Scottish tradition that this is where it started. And of course, I know a lot of people would say, well, that isn't really true. It didn't start here. But I think as far as most golfers are concerned, and particularly most modern golfers, it's where golf did start. St. Andrews is really a public golf course owned by the town of St. Andrews. So when you think about that and you say, well, the R&A or the old clubhouse is really the club, and it's a private club. But that is not any more a part of the golf course than the new club or some of the other clubs that are on the 18th hole.
Well, when you're talking about that St. Andrews does belong to the township, and you just said a moment ago that it is a public golf course, but isn't it true that it's very difficult to get a tee time there, and then they post it in the town square? Now, where else in the world would you find your tee time on the town square over here?
Well, right. And where else in the world would it be just common sight to see a foursome walking down the main street going into the grocery store with golf bags on their shoulders?
That's true. The greens there, Arnold, you know, they have a green here that's almost 3/4 of an acre. The bunkers. Now, when you start thinking about when those people developed that particular golf course, you know, there's been hearsay that the sheep actually made the bunker simply because they were trying to get in out of the wind.
That's what mowed the fairways and mowed the greens. It is a different golf course, isn't it, than the others that we play?
Well, I don't think there's a golf course like it in the world, and I don't think that it can be copied. I don't think that you can build St. Andrews again, even if you took and measured every little mound and every hole on it. It was created. It wasn't built. And the people, and we can't again overlook the people. Not only the people that live in the town of St. Andrews, but the RNA, the people who have carried the tradition of St. Andrews and the organization around the world. And remembering that the British Empire and all the colonies around the world that's how, and part of the mystique of the whole thing was that they understood the game of golf, and whether it be in India or Australia or South Africa, you name it, the word of St. Andrews and the Royal and Ancient spread years before you and I started playing golf.
They say that actually when the golf course was developed, that it was developed to be played clockwise instead of counterclockwise that we play it now. Have you ever played the course backwards?
No, as a matter of fact, I haven't, but Lee, a few years ago, I was very honored and privileged to have been made a member of the RNA, and each year they have an outing, and all the members go and play the golf course clockwise.
Is it easier?
Well, from what they tell me, it's a fun situation, and I guess the scotch goes with you, you know. and they do have fun. And I from what I have heard them talk about, I guess it does play just a little bit easier. But as you know, when we play it, there is never anything you can depend on, a bounce or anything, except for one thing. And that is when you really play good, you get good results.
Maybe a silly question, but I want to ask you anyway. I've had the pleasure of winning 2 Open Championships. You've had the pleasure of winning 2 Open Championships. But I didn't win at St. Andrews. Wished I could have won one there. Don't you wish that you could have traded one of them for St. Andrews?
Well, you opened with a question. Yeah, you opened with, was I disappointed playing St. Andrews? Can you imagine? 1960, Lee. It was really the Centennial British Open, and everything was there. The whole, everything was laid out. We broke tradition that year. We broke tradition because in all the years of the British Open, 100 years of British Open, they played 36 holes the last day every year until that year. And the reason they didn't play 36 holes that day, we finished our morning round, which was the 3rd round, and it rained. And well, you know, from your visits there, you've seen it rain and rain and rain, and the golf course never becomes unplayable.
That's right, yeah.
This time, it rained, and that little hole in the front of the 18th.
Oh, you're talking about the Valley of Sin.
Right, the Valley of Sin was filled with water, and they had no choice but to cancel the 4th round. And of course, I always felt like, gee, if we could have played that afternoon. As it turned out, a great guy won it. Cal Nagel beat me by a shot. And I was disappointed because St. Andrews was where I really did want to win the Open. But I will not give up Troon or Birkdale.
You know, we were talking about a moment ago. You won the British Open in 1961. What was the prize money then?
Well, I won $1,400. Can you imagine that? Today, what is it today? I haven't contended for it for a while. So.
I think it's about $90,000. I won $13,000 and lost some money. I mean, you took your whole family there. I mean, you lost money on it.
Oh, well, of course, again, you're playing for a title that I don't think you can put a dollar on it. I never really felt that way about certain golf tournaments you play, whether it be the U.S. Open or the British Open. You're playing for something that is more than $1,400 or $90,000, or at least I felt that way about it, Lee.
But there's no question, it sort of got going pretty fast from 1,400 to 90,000.
You know, Arnold, St. Louis, playing the Ryder Cup, we're going to the victory dinner, and you looked over at me after we had won the cup, and you'd said, if I was only 20 years younger, and it led me to believe that you left something, you wanted to do something different as far as playing. Would you have changed anything?
Not really. No, I think you can always look back and say, well, I'd have done this a little differently, or I'd have done that, or I might have won more golf tournaments. But as a matter of fact, Lee, golf has been so good to me, and I've had such a great life from it that I can't really ever want to go back. I think anybody would like to say, well, I've 20 years, gee, what could I do? No, I meant by that I'd like to go on playing. I'd like to compete with you and Nicholas and some of the younger guys that are coming along, because that's what my life was all about, playing golf and competing against good players, great players. I love that. And I think that now, sure, I'd still like to compete, but I'm competing in my own way now, and I'm still enjoying it, and that's what golf's all about.
Well, we've always said, Arnold, that you actually found the path to go over to the British Open and to play from America, just to come here and compete against these players. And I told people, I said, you know, 30, 40 years from now, we're going to think, hey, Arnold Palmer was the one that really in modern day made this path. But I said, don't look back. I said, because 30, 40 years from now, Arnold Palmer will still probably be playing. Some folks say never look back, never look back. Well, not for me, because getting the chance to look back gives me the opportunity to see how far we've come. And believe me, we've come a long way. This game has been very good to many of us. And you people out there and fans all over the world have made it all possible. And we appreciate it. But time's getting on now. And that old man, Father Time, he's going to come and get us one way or another. We're starting to feel it in more ways than one. So, I thought it would kind of be nice for us to get together just this once, person to person, smell the flowers along the way together in this wonderful world of golf. We hope you enjoyed visiting with us as much as we did with you.